Hi, I am the Lady Miss Vagina Jenkins, and it is time for Queer Astrology. First and foremost, happy Pride to my queer and trans people. I love you and I see you and I just value and adore you, and I'm so grateful for you and your existence, sincerely. Secondly, I just want to remind folks that the first Pride was a riot and that we have Black and POC, trans and non-binary spectrum people to thank for Pride and our queer liberation in general. So as you're going out and you're partying all month and doing all of the Pride events, please make sure to think about and center and prioritize Black, POC, trans, and non-binary people as you are actively queering up the world. Yes. So in our last video, we talked about all of these different ways that you could apply astrology, right? We talked about medical astrology, we talked about cultural astrology, what else? Oh, we talked about synastry, how two charts fit together so you can understand your relationship to people. And I think all of those ways are super interesting and useful, but as a starting platform, let's think about natal astrology. That's where I want to go. So in these next 3 videos, we'll talk about getting into natal astrology as a way to just understand astrology, generally speaking, through the lens of understanding yourself. So in this video, we'll talk about easy and free ways to get into astrology. In the next video, we'll talk about websites, apps, tools that I like. And in the video after that, we'll talk about some of the different ways that astrologers understand the energy of the placements in your chart. But for right now, let's get into 5 easy and free ways to get into natal astrology. So number 1, gather your birth data. This can be easier said than done for some people. By birth data, I mean your birth time, birthplace, and birth date. Most people know their birthplace and date, but not always do we know our birth times. For example, with older clients, sometimes I see that they didn't record birth times back in the day. Sometimes with my international clients, I'll see that they don't, certain countries have not recorded birth times. And so, you know, that might be difficult information to get, but it does not mean that you cannot access astrology. In terms of navigating around that, here are some pieces of advice I can offer. 1, interviewing multiple family members to understand, maybe you don't know the exact time from them, but you can understand the time frame. Oh, it happened before breakfast, or oh, the World Series was playing when you were born, that kind of thing. I would say interviewing multiple family members is useful because parents, surprisingly, are not always the most reliable narrators around birth things. I think there's so much stress and trauma happening that they can't necessarily accurately recall all of the events. So yeah, it would be good to interview a number of family members. Another thing that you can do to get your birth time, if you don't know it, is checking your baby book, if you have one of those, or a family Bible. Sometimes birth data has been recorded there. Another way to access this information could be through getting your long form birth certificate from your state of birth. Usually the long form has the birth time on it. And finally, I'll say, if you can't get your birth time through any of those means, it could be useful to talk to an astrologer to do a rectification reading, which is basically an astrologer interviewing you about your life events and then comparing those life events to transits that were happening in the sky to sort of reverse engineer what your birth time might be. It's hard work, but it's absolutely worth it. And yeah, I just want to throw that out there, that just because you don't know your birth time does not mean that you cannot access astrology. Number two, once you have all your data, get your big three. Big three is astrology jargon for your sun, moon, and rising signs. Most people know their sun sign, right? Because they know the day that they were born, but you might not know your moon or rising sign. And you literally can Google, what's my big three in natal astrology, and come up with a number of websites that will give you that information as long as you enter your birth data. I like to describe the big three in the following way, that imagine that life is like walking a path, literally walking the path of life. The sun sign I think about as the thing that is illuminating that path, the light that you are going towards. The rising sign is how you walk that path, how you navigate life. And then the moon sign is what you need to feel safe in your walking and navigating of the path. The big three are your personal planets, and they're the building blocks of understanding natal astrology. Number three, start reading your horoscope for your rising sign instead of your sun sign. Horoscopes are actually meant to be read for your rising sign. That's what astrologers intend. So for example, like your rising sign is the sign in your first house, right? So when an astrologer says, oh, the moon is transiting your fourth house of home and family, so you might be having some big feels at home this week. The reason why they know that is because they know what's in your first house. Your sun could literally be anywhere in your chart and doesn't offer a whole lot of information in terms of interpreting transits that are happening. Fun fact, we basically have capitalism to blame for sun sign astrology, in that back in the day, in order to sell periodicals, they would do these horoscope columns, right? It was such a fun way to access astrology, and it sold more papers. But the thing is, people didn't know their birth time. They knew their birth date. They knew their sun sign. So astrology columns sort of catered to the idea that, oh, well, everyone knows their sun sign. You can access astrology in this way through your sun sign, but it's not ever accurate, and it is not the way that astrologers intend for these columns to be written, or read, excuse me. Number four, start following the transits of the moon. So the moon changes signs about every 2.5 days or so, and it could be an interesting experiment to see how your moods and energy change based on the transits of the moon. Finally, start following astrologers on social media platforms that you use that really vibe with your energy. For me, I really appreciate astrologers that are doing more education rather than like celebrity or pop astrology, or that thing where people are like dragging signs like, oh, Aries be like this, or Libras be shopping, Libras be shopping. Like, okay, that's fun and it's entertainment, but my favorite accounts, my favorite astrology creators are doing education, and I'll name some of them and I'll put them down in the info box below. On this platform, on YouTube, I love Finesse, he's the reason why I kind of started this channel, in that he does astrology education on like all of the planets, all of the aspects. It's just really in-depth astrology education. And I saw his video about Mercury in Pisces, which is my placement, and how it's such a difficult placement to have. It makes it so that I feel as if people are not understanding me. And he has that placement, and it just made me think, wow, if he is out here with that placement, making videos and being in conversation and connection with other astrologers, I too could do the same. And so yeah, shout out to him. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Also on this platform, I really like Astrologer, who also does education and has like a 20-year study of astrology, and I really like the way that she breaks down concepts, and also am in awe of the ways in which she does astrocartography and mundane astrology predictions about world events. It's just so brilliant, honestly. I also follow on TikTok an account called 0 Degrees Astrology. She is a traditional Hellenistic astrologer who does like a lot of education around like traditional astrology, which is not my jam, but I do like understanding it from the perspective of understanding it as a foundational sort of thing in my practice. So definitely check them out. And on Instagram, I like Red Rabbit Astrology. They talk about Chinese or Bajish astrology. I also like NJK Astrology. She talks about astrology from a decolonial lens, which I absolutely appreciate. So yeah, check out those accounts. I'll make sure to link them below, and comment below, like, what accounts do you follow? Who is doing education and really breaking down concepts on the different platforms that you use? I'm curious. I want to be in conversation with more dope astrologers. Yeah, that's the video. Thanks for making time for queer astrology.